Welcome, everyone, to the 52nd episode of the Best Phone Plans Podcast. Tonight, I have my fantastic co-host, Stetson Doggett, and we'll be talking about Ookla acquiring RootMetrics, Neville Ray's Q&A, and much more. But Stetson,
great to be here.
Before we get into it, let me ask you the famous question you always ask me. How you been?
I've been doing outstanding, Dennis. Lots have been happening, and I did a live stream actually yesterday of the T-Mobile Q&A, which I thought was really fun, kind of spontaneous, spur of the moment. And now it's kind of interesting to digest some of what Neville shared and talk more about it. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I actually ended up catching your stream after I got off of work, which I must say, after you get done watching this fantastic podcast, I recommend you watch. It was very good. But I think that's a good transition. Why don't we start with that? Since you got to actually see it live, Stetson, what were your thoughts? Were you fulfilled? I know you even got one of your questions personally answered.
Yeah, so I think the best way to describe this, Dennis, is Neville answered everything in a very diplomatic and safe way. It was saying stuff without actually saying stuff, if you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean.
My question, I just threw it in there, what the heck? And it was basically, when will T-Mobile stop selling LTE devices? And I was trying to get at, when will they be switching over to only selling 5G devices? And Neville said, we already mostly sell 5G devices. We'll probably be selling only 5G soon, more or less. No specific dates. There were a couple of other people asking about, when 5G carrier aggregation would be deployed and active for a lot of users. And another great question, Dennis, you would like this. When will T-Mobile actually care about small cells and millimeter wave? And Neville was like, we view that as an important part of our T-Mobile network strategy.
Think a better question, and I actually set a reminder and just forgot to post in time, but I would love to know when T-Mobile is going to take a serious look at their backhaul issues.
Yes. No one asked about that. That would have been a great question.
Because that's honestly the biggest limiting factor right now on the T-Mobile network, in all sincerity. Even 20 megahertz of N41, if it was only 20 extra megahertz, could easily add an extra 150 meg, 200 megabits per second of capacity. Right? Easy.
Completely agree. Yeah. But
what we end up seeing a lot of times is T-Mobile will throw up 80, 100 megahertz N41, and speeds, granted, I know it varies market by market, but for a lot of cell sites, speeds don't improve to the dramatic extent that we might suspect from all those wide channels. I mean, I think 100 megahertz in theory is supposed to be able to, theoretically supposed to do over a gig.
I think that's right. That's what I've seen. And
yeah,
my market, I'm hitting 600 tops. And that's, as you mentioned, just backhaul. That's a backhaul issue.
And for mine, I'm usually seeing more along the lines of 200 to 400 megabits per second, with the very rare site that does have proper backhaul hitting 700 to 800. But that's when it's 100 megahertz N41 carrier agged with band 2 and band 66. So there's 140 megahertz worth of stuff on there.
Yeah.
But TLDR, I would love to hear how Neville Ray would be able to fancy his way around that.
I can answer for you probably right now. We're working to expand the T-Mobile coverage and experience, and we'll be upgrading backhaul as necessary on our network.
Yeah, but before I don't want to rag on T-Mobile because I'm actually happy for them about the next thing we'll talk about. But you know what I find really surprising?
What's surprising to you?
The thing that I find surprising is they don't utilize more of the Sprint keep sites, because I know Sprint keep sites that had Sprint's band 41, specifically in markets where Sprint was doing 5G, I believe. There was a few of them. They already did crazy good backhaul on these sites. And to the best of my knowledge, T-Mobile was just plopping that equipment off of that good site and putting it on their existing site.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you the strategy. And that's basically someone even asked that, how do you manage the network priority, know where towers are and things like that. And Neville gave we have tools on the back end that deal with that kind of answer. But
yeah, it was about the customer feedback thing. I saw that.
Yeah, and someone else asked, in my market, Sprint had put up these, I think it was 8T, 8R nodes, cells, I don't know the actual term, but 8T, NR equipment, and, will T-Mobile be utilizing those? Will those cause interference? And Neville, again, just kind of brushed it off. We will use the best equipment based on the situation and environment. So, I don't know.
Which, on that note, best can mean a lot of things. What I noticed during the conference calls, the earnings calls, is I think best for them has to do with cost. We're going to utilize the most affordable solution. Because have you ever noticed during their network earnings calls to investors, they never talk about the quality of the network. They focus on the cost aspect of the deployment, not the quality, the cost aspect.
So they're doing the best network they can at a cost.
Correct. Or the better way to phrase it in corporate speak is we're maximizing the yield and value on a per dollar capita.
That's great, Dennis. I can tell you're ready to start your own T-Mobile company over there. Dennis Mobile coming to market soon. So I mean, there were some things that I wish Neville could have gone more in detail with. I understand, obviously why not. But there was one topic that was pretty interesting, right?
Yes, this is the one I want to applaud them for.
Yeah. So what one was that?
That they're starting to go live with carrier aggregation over NR.
Yeah. So what is carrier aggregation over NR? NR, I guess we should clarify, is new radio. Basically, is another way of saying 5G. So this is carrier aggregating 5G. What does that mean, Dennis?
Yeah, so carrier aggregation is nothing too new to the wireless space. It's happened during the LTE era. All it is basically taking two pieces of spectrum that weren't part of a contiguous block and sort of gluing them together to give you a nice, wide, fast channel full of throughput. You can basically, when I say contiguous spectrum, sometimes so spectrum, it's in blocks, okay? There might be A block, B block, C block, D block, right?
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, in the crazy world of the U.S., spectrum isn't always contiguous. It's not always nice like A, B, and C, and D, in that order.
So a contiguous would be if you own blocks A, B, and C. That'd be
right.
You have that contiguous block. And if it wasn't continuous, you would own A, C, and E.
Right. So what carrier aggregation allows you to do is basically combine A, C, and E in this scenario, so you can still get that 60 megahertz channel without stepping on other people's
contiguous
toes.
Block.
Yeah, basically.
Gotcha. So I guess before, you would really just connect to one block at a time, and the carrier aggregation tech basically allowed you to add those blocks together, even if they weren't next to each other.
Right. And then also worth noting too is that with carrier aggregation, you can also combine, say, mid-band spectrum with low-band spectrum. So you can utilize both of those. And that's the more important part about this because...
Yeah, why did I want that?
Well, when it comes to coverage and range for a cell tower, the weakest link in the chain is your phone.
My phone's the weak... Dennis, I got the best phone I could. You're telling me this is a weak link?
Well, yes, because your phone has a battery. It's very focused on power efficiency. It can only scream so loud that I'm here. That's where low band comes in. Everybody knows low band is good for coverage. And low band is typically your anchor band. It's what's used for your upload to tell the tower, hi, I'm here. Right?
Gotcha. So it's your phone is using a band that gets huge coverage and is power efficient to say, hey, I'm connected to the network, here I am.
Right. And it also tends to not have, by the nature of low band, doesn't tend to have as much capacity as that glorious N41 that we always talk about. Well, with carrier aggregation, in theory, it should be able to extend N41's reach by a little bit, since N41 will specifically be allocated to the downstream. Downstream comes from the tower. That's your phone just listening, hey, tower, I'm here.
So it sounds to me like the tower can have more power behind it to broadcast that signal further. And if the phone is using the uplink, which is power efficient, it can do that, and the tower can shoot over that N41 and give it better reach and better characteristics.
Yes, and I feel like I'm not giving it the best explanation, but I'm trying to keep it as simple
we appreciate
as
it. I feel like I'm starting to understand this, which is exciting to me.
Are you serious or joking?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
You know, I sometimes just nod my head at these things, but I think I'm actually getting it this time.
Yeah, so basically TLDR, low band's important because it's going to be good use for the uplink, and it's going to make it much easier for your phone to basically let a tower know where things are. The N40 won't be used for the downlink, for the capacity. It's also not necessarily as affected by your... Like, as long as it knows your phone is existent, it's not necessarily going to impact performance too much on the downlink speed if your phone's in a weaker signal area from the N41. So, in theory, it should extend range a little bit.
Cool.
Maybe about 30%, give or take.
How do you think this will impact just battery life? You know, I saw some people on yesterday's stream saying, hey, you know, I'm actually getting better battery on LTE versus 5G. How do you think 5G carrier aggregation will impact battery?
It's not going to really improve battery if that's what you're shooting for. And that just simply comes down to, I mean, it could, but in reality, the thing that is going to hurt your battery life is going to be based off of two things. Signal strength overall, like basically how loud does your phone need to scream so that the tower knows you're here? Like if you're on a cell edge, right, your phone is shouting, it is yelling at the top of its lungs, it's getting tired, right? Yeah. Whereas if you have a nice dense network where there's cell sites all over the place and you're never on the true edge of a cell site and you're getting full bars, your battery life is always going to be a little bit better. Yeah, I'm using this analogy because basically what I'm trying to get at here is that T-Mobile, or any carrier for this matter, doesn't have 5G deployed on all their cell sites in a cluster. LTE, however, is, which is why, typically speaking, LTE tends to be a little bit more battery efficient.
Because you're always connected and you can connect to much closer cell sites.
Right. Outside of that as well, it's also worth mentioning that LTE is very mature. Like, the modems that have been designed for LTE have become so tiny, so efficient. Things have been put in place to conserve power to the absolute maximum, which also helps from the efficiency standpoint. 5G, still in its early adoptions. I think we're only on like the third iteration of 5G modems with current devices, with fourth around the corner with the new Snapdragon 8 series. So
yeah, 8 series Gen 1, I think is what they're calling.
Yeah, so as far as battery life goes, it's going to take time. I mean, I'll just say that the iPhone 13 Pro Max clearly illustrates that battery has been improving from a combination of software.
I actually haven't noticed anything really. Like, I think my battery life is great. I haven't really felt that it's been degraded. I almost feel like it's those earlier devices, like the Note 10 5G, like
the ones that had the separate external modem that wasn't integrated with the chip.
Yeah. So that's like the earlier ones is we're going to notice the battery hits. That's really interesting. So good on T-Mobile. I think 5G carrier aggregation is live now for iPhone 13 users.
Correct.
And I believe I heard it might be going live Q3 2022 for a much broader audience, and they're really going to try and boost it. And, you know, obviously Neville couldn't share a whole lot on timeline for things, but the bottom line is T-Mobile, especially with the C-band delays that Verizon, AT&T have been experiencing, T-Mobile is going to try and make their network as good and as appealing as possible to get people to consider switching over to it.
I think they're incredibly well positioned, and I am proud of them for being first to adopt some of these technologies that are part of 5G. I do, however, want to say that, are you familiar with the term a paper launch?
I'm not. What does that mean?
Basically, it's where you have a big marketing event to announce something. Let's just say it's a graphics card.
Yeah.
But you don't actually have inventory in stock to actually start making sales. Or it might be like 10 graphics cards.
Yeah.
I.e. a paper launch.
But it's not actually ready to buy.
Yeah, it's like a paper launch. In that same vein, I know T-Mobile said it's live, but it's not something that, since it's on iPhones only, it's not something we can easily check because service mode on iPhone kind of stinks, to be honest.
It's really bad, actually, but it got better, but it's still bad.
And also, I'm willing to take a wild gander and just say that this is going to be more of a paper launch where it might be on like maybe 10 markets that have it, in the same way that millimeter wave, when it first came out, was very much a paper launch from Verizon, right? It was like 0.001% of the network coverage was millimeter wave, right?
Yeah.
So tempered expectations, but I think it's an overall good thing. At least they're working on it. That's more than could be said for AT&T, right?
Yeah.
So
I don't know. I felt like, so T-Mobile did take a pretty big jab. I guess Neville took a pretty big jab at Verizon, saying, you know, other carriers guessed wrong with the 5G strategy and went all in on millimeter wave, where really you want to go in on mid-band. I almost feel like that's unfair. Like Verizon and AT&T haven't really had the mid-band spectrum to allocate towards 5G. So like they had one of two options, like either don't do anything or go in on low band, or go all out on millimeter wave. And I think Verizon has gone all out on millimeter wave. Well, they have gone all out on millimeter wave. So I feel like I don't know, it's a little unfair, I think, to criticize their strategy when they haven't had the spectrum.
I'm not criticizing the strategy.
I'm saying like, Neville was.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just saying like AT&T hasn't done anything to say make a standalone 5G core yet, for example, for the little bit of spectrum that they are using. I'm just using an example. But long story short, Neville Ray is blowing smoke. That's the T-Mobile marketing going in full swing because, as you mentioned, they don't have C-band, so it's not like they could deploy mid-band. And honestly, at the end of the day, I've already said this clearly, but the spectrum that actually makes the 5G reality that gets talked about on the stages and stuff like that is the millimeter wave. Like, that's the good stuff. That's the like, wowza, my home internet's not even this fast. How is this possible experience, right?
Yeah,
like,
actually, I was just thinking about that. You know, we were talking behind the scenes about doing Wi-Fi 6 speed tests, and I was like, wow, you know, my iPhone 13, it's maxing out at 600 megabits per second for Wi-Fi 6 speeds, and I have symmetrical gigabit. I can get faster speeds on millimeter wave than I can on Wi-Fi 6. Why is that, Dennis?
So...
Is there a lot that goes into it? Or?
Explain like I'm five. Okay, so you got to remember that Wi-Fi for the longest time has had two channels to use. There was the 2.4 gigahertz channel, which was known for its coverage, but very slow, generally speaking. And then there's the 5 gigahertz channel, which was nice and fast. Both these are unlicensed spectrum, and the amount of spectrum that was there was rather limited. I want to say in total for 5 gigahertz, there's 160 megahertz of... It might be 320. It's either 320 or 160. I can't remember the specifics right now. I'd have to Google search. But very limited amount, right? But because it's a very limited amount and it's unlicensed, what happens is, let's just say you and I were neighbors, Stetson. Like, we live right next to each other. We both have routers. And if we decide to both try to max out Wi-Fi 6 potential, have these big 160 megahertz channels being broadcasted, we're gonna have interference. It's not like our routers are smart.
That is, I had this myself because, of course, I'm that one person who has 3 home internet services. I had our personal Nextlight service going. I had T-Mobile home internet, and I had Xfinity internet all going, and speeds just went down the gutter. It was a disaster. Noticeable improvements when I turned off 2 of the other routers.
Right. So Wi-Fi interference is an issue. There's also the conversation about power output, like your router, very low power output in comparison to a typical cell site. Also, with cellular deployments, the spectrum that the carriers are using is literally exclusively theirs.
Yeah.
Like, they bought it. No one else can, like, rebroadcast it. There's guard bands in place and all kinds of other fancy regulations in place that basically give them the most efficient way to utilize things. And also, millimeter wave deployments, I think, are using like 400, 600, 800 megahertz, orders of magnitude more spectrum than what's available on Wi-Fi. Now, 6E, which is that new 6 gigahertz that was freed up, does help resolve that. That's definitely cleaner. But there's basically 0 devices, with the exception of like the S21 and I think the Pixel 6 Pro that can utilize it. So that's a thing. And also something else to mention too is that a lot of the fancy things that exist on Wi-Fi for a while now, like 4x4 MIMO, there's not really any phones aside from the Pixel 6 Pro that support 4x4 MIMO. even though it's been around for forever, even though phones support 4x4 MIMO over cellular, whenever it comes to the Wi-Fi chip, they always do like 2x2 MIMO or something like that.
So it sounds like it's like three big reasons. One is channel width. The cellular millimeter wave channels are just so much wider than Wi-Fi right now. Second is interference. You have exclusive spectrum for the carriers that they get to use, so you get faster, cleaner signal and better speeds. Wi-Fi, tons of interference. I think maybe even microwaves can interfere. I think I've heard that a couple of times. And then the third would be the technology, the MIMO, which is multiple input, multiple output, that's actually built into the cellular modems on the chip. They're doing 4x4 for cellular, 2x2 for Wi-Fi. So you're getting, I'll put slower in quotes because 600 is still outstanding, but compared to cellular, you're getting slower.
Just to clarify one detail.
Yeah. Most
routers have support for 4x4 MIMO or mu MIMO.
Mu MIMO.
But pretty much every device manufacturer out there, when they make their little Wi-Fi cards, aren't supporting these features on the Wi-Fi side.
Yeah.
Because cost, basically. It comes down to cost. Like, does the average consumer really notice the difference between 500 megabits per second on their phone and a gigabit on their phone over Wi-Fi?
Yeah, probably not. So it's Apple. It's these guys. They put in the 2x2, whereas my router, especially the new one, actually supports up to 4x4.
Yep. And then there's a million other things to consider, such as like walls and all kinds of other fun stuff. But that's the short version of it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Where did we start with this, and where we're going back?
You. I thought it was like its own dedicated topic. I was curious, got sidetracked. Knew Dennis had the knowledge, so we dove into why I get faster cellular speeds sometimes than faster Wi-Fi speeds. But yeah, I think with that, we did touch on the FAA and what's going on there. So a quick update. Currently, we're hoping that an agreement can be reached by early January for starting to roll out the A block spectrum for C-band. This is pretty far away from the frequencies that the FAA uses for altimeters in some of their planes. So that should hopefully go live. But other than that, I mean, Roger did publish an article saying there could be as long as a 7-month delay. It really depends how quickly things get ironed out. And there are some huge financial implications. Like, Dennis, how would you feel if you were Verizon or AT&T collectively spent around $70 billion on the A block C-band spectrum and all of a sudden couldn't use it for like 7 months after you bought it? And one of the key selling points of that spectrum is it was going to be cleared first.
Pretty upset, especially since, in the enterprise space, right, there's a lot that goes into a project like such as a network deployment. So as this buying process was happening, there was probably teams of engineers and project managers already rolling out in phases, acquiring supplies from suppliers and doing all that fun stuff in the supply chain to make sure they could actually execute and go live by a specific time frame. So I'm sure Verizon is sitting on a ton of equipment right now that's probably sitting away in a warehouse as they figure out what to do. And as we all know, tech isn't really an asset that appreciates in value. Like, every day that goes by where they're not using the stuff that they just purchased from Ericsson is another day that gets closer to Ericsson coming out with a new cellular piece of equipment that's going to end up needing to be deployed at some point anyway.
Hey, you know the 1 million devices you just bought? Those are all outdated now. Sorry, guys.
I mean, it's not that bad in the real space. Like, Verizon's gonna do it, but like the TLDR is that this is really rough, especially too as their competitor T-Mobile just starts running further down the racetrack. Even if they're tripping and skipping,
they're tripping and face palming, they're still getting up and they're still running because they can see their triple layer magenta cake at the finish line and they're going towards it.
Right now it's more like 2 layers and some candles, but they're getting there.
They're getting there. So that's a quick update there. Dennis, let's pivot to probably the most interesting, most exciting, most curious topic of this podcast, possibly of the week. And this is Ookla buying RootMetrics.
Ooh, this is a good one. So right off the bat, before we get into the details, I think we should explain to everybody what Ookla is and what RootMetrics is in case they're new to the show.
Great. So Ookla is the speed test app. If you basically Google speed test. They are the top result is the Ookla speed test app, and they crowdsource speed tests. They built an app. They made a network of servers that you can connect to run this speed test, see how fast speeds you're getting for download, upload, your latency, and your jitter. And Ookla, in exchange for providing that speed test for free, uses your speed test data to map the United States and provide data for their clients. So they can tell their clients, hey, Verizon is getting the fastest speeds in this area, or T-Mobile is getting great speeds in this area, things like that. RootMetrics, very similar company, but they're actually doing a lot of their own data collection. So they're doing driving tests and walking tests with cellular devices to see how the networks perform and to kind of get bigger coverage areas. They also have a crowdsourced speed test app, but very few people use it. And they're really more on, I would say RootMetrics is kind of coverage side and providing their own root score and root results, whereas Ookla is kind of on the crowdsourced side and also providing some of their data. They have their own proprietary speed scores, and there's like a formula for calculating that, but overall kind of similar companies, but operating just a little bit differently.
Yeah, so what's your gut reaction on it? I mean, do you think this is going to be a good thing, bad thing, or neutral?
Great question. I guess I have two gut reactions. Gut reaction number one is a little sad. Like, we're seeing, these were pretty big competitors, Ookla and RootMetrics. They have a lot of overlapping clients, and they're providing, each different data and angle points for those clients. So I'm a little sad to see competition kind of go away a little bit. But my overwhelming reaction is actually joy and happiness. Like, I want Ookla's speed test app to get overhauled, rebuilt from the ground up, and just be the best banging speed test app out there. I'm thinking like integrating the RootMetrics coverage map with the hexagons into the Ookla speed test app, make it actually look good, make it work fast and well and reliable, have it so like I can do a speed test and it reflects immediately on the map. I'm just daydreaming of how cool and awesome this would be. So I don't know. That's what I'm thinking right now. What did you think, Dennis, when you heard this news? Were you like, oh my God, they're going to make the best speed test app possible? Or were you like, oh no, there goes competition? What was your reaction?
I mean, my reaction was at first, I thought about the synergies that could occur, i.e., like you said, RootMetrics really well known for their personal drivers doing things, but in doing so, they miss a lot of potential areas for coverage, specifically more in like rural America and like how they do things. Whereas with RootMetrics, as we know, they collect a lot more data on the speed test and show on the consumer side, and they could maybe do some comparisons that supplement things like, this is what our personal testing showed, here's what real world usage looked like for you, the consumers, and give much more accurate results as far as things go on that front. And then, as you touched on, the aspect of a coverage map, which Ookla does have, but I believe it's only on Android.
It's only on Android.
I'm only on Android, and it's honestly pretty poo-poo.
Not great, Ookla. We love you, but the coverage map is not great.
I'm hoping that they take advantage of a lot of the stuff that RootMetrics had developed, because RootMetrics has a great, as you mentioned, hexagon map. But I would love to see them go a little bit further with it. So I would love if they were able to compile all the speed tests that they take and put on this map and show not just cellular performance, but home internet performance, and provide this information to the FCC so they can make accurate investments in the fiber deployments. I would love the government to basically fund Ookla and RootMetrics to do the testing to show why these carrier coverage maps that exist are horrible, because they have the answers now. The only thing they're missing, okay, is what's the app on Android that like actually shows the bands? Please help me.
Oh, Cell Mapper?
Thank you. The only thing they're missing in this duo is the stuff that Cell Mapper does. That's what we need to this layer cake, okay? Cell Mapper needs to partner up now with this new mega company and just get one perfectly banging speed testing app that's full of data. Because honestly, one of the big thoughts that I thought about immediately is basically this. We had these different coverage maps, and you talked about competition, but these coverage maps don't really matter or aren't necessarily as accurate if there's not a lot of users, right? Like, by the very nature of how this works, you basically kind of only want there to be one person so that everyone's using that information instead of it all being split into like smaller sex.
Yeah, it's almost, this is a bad example, but it's almost like if one company did the western half and one company did the eastern half. Like, you're not really seeing the full picture. You need both of those data sets together to really get the most accurate, complete picture possible.
Yeah, what realistically happened more often though is you would see with like, I'm gonna pick on CellMapper, but this is not fair. But I'm just gonna pick on CellMapper. You would only see good reports typically for urban areas, right? Like, a lot of data that might be along highways or something, or some one-off roads would be pretty inaccurate about where the tower is placed, what bands were on the tower. CellMapper doesn't really report speeds; it just reports where towers and signal strength is. It doesn't show the full picture. Whereas Ookla, collects the ping, it collects the jitter, it gets the IP, it knows the provider that the speed test was on, it has the more robust server network. Like, one of RootMetrics' biggest faults was that they were hosting their own servers and they were somewhat limited on where they were, either on East Coast, Central, or West Coast, which ultimately actually skews the results because,
you're getting higher pings, right? If the server's just physically farther away.
Higher pings and potentially slower speeds depending on the peering agreements, whereas on Ookla, T-Mobile, AT&T, and Verizon all host their own speed testing servers, which some might argue that's not fair, but I honestly think that's the most fairest way to do things,
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you, Dennis. So what would you build in your dream speed test app? What would that look like? I was thinking about this today. I have some features that I'd love to see. What would you like in the Dennis speed test app?
First off, I would like all the information that Sasha Stegan gets when he drives around on his developer speed test app.
We want pro mode.
So yeah, like, I want to see all the nitty gritty. I want to see the packet loss details with an actual thing that like traces things out. I want to see the ping. I want to see the jitter. I want to have the option to do a multi-channel download and a single channel download, because Ookla speed test will sometimes actually connect to multiple servers at the same time to test your internet speed, which isn't really a real world use case, because if you're downloading something from like,
it'll be from one server. It'll just be like, this server has it, so you connect to that one server and you download it, and that's it. End of story. Right.
So I want to see all that nerdy information, and then on the cellular side, I want to be able to see in the app the bands I'm connecting to, what I'm carrier aggregating to, the RSRP value instead of getting bars on phone. So RSRP, SINAR, and there's something else. RSFP, SNR, and then there's one other, RSRQ, I think, are the three values.
Sure, yeah.
I want to see all of those. I want an actual easy to understand map. RootMetrics was pretty on point with the hexagons, but if we're going to do a hexagon map, I'd actually prefer there to be more hexagons on said map, so it can be more accurate to a localized zone.
Yeah.
And I would like to see it incorporate like a comparative chart. Like, if I click on this hexagon, right, and it was a place that was tested by a RootMetrics employee, I want to see RootMetrics results, since they have like the best of the best phone, and I want to see user generated data. So it's just like, RootMetrics reports A+ rating and got average this speed on this carrier, and this is what user performance looks like, which takes a look at all phones, even if they're not the ideal phone, right?
Yeah. No, I love all of the ideas you're putting out. I want all of those, and I think it would be really cool to have my own personal map. Like, I want to see where all of the Stetson speed tests were run. I want to see what devices I was using to run them. Ideally, what modems those devices have inside of them, to really help you understand, like, hey, I'm getting these fast speeds, and it's because I'm using the new X60 modem with the 5G carrier aggregation.
And let me go one step further on that, Stetson. I think it would be great if, because Ookla sort of does this to a very small degree, but have an account that you can actually sign in that backs up from all the different devices.
Yes.
So that way, if something happens to the device, you don't lose all that speed test history.
Yeah, that's also what I want. Like, my account, see all the data points, where I was, what I was getting.
Also, add a drive mode so that like the device can continuously run speed tests or something in the background.
110%. I was also thinking it'd be cool to have like a point system. Like, you could see how many data points you've contributed to the bigger coverage map.
Yeah, coverage map does that already with how many cell sites you contributed.
Yeah, that's CellMapper.
CellMapper, excuse me.
I'm thinking like Google's local guides. Like if you share a photo of a place, you get like 5 points. And
I think CellMapper does a pretty good job because they do the points. They show how many unique cell sites you've shown. And
I want points. I want leaderboards.
Yeah, and on the points thing, if you click on a localized site, you can see who the top contributor was, which fun fact for Pittsburgh.
Are you a top contributor, Dennis?
Yeah.
That's sweet. Congratulations.
I looked at my Galaxy S20 because I forgot that I left it connected to the just LT and let it record. I have over 150,000 cellular points uploaded.
That's sweet.
So yeah,
I want that, dude.
Yeah.
I also want, and I was chatting with people in the Discord. I want cell towers to be able to be on the map, or a map with cell towers,
like CellMapper.
Yeah, exactly. Where I have to go to get this service, like what towers have 5G, which ones don't. Some feedback I heard is that, and CellMapper actually I think has this problem too. Some people will just click them and drag them all over the place and put them in the wrong spots. But I'm thinking maybe if you get granted super user rights, you get the privilege to add in sites, so we can see as consumers what these networks look like.
I mean, I think the smarter move is just simply, instead of having the users put the cell map on there, use some fancy AI that looks at the RSRP value and be like, this person drove in a 360 degree angle. I think we can, relatively speaking, figure out that the cell site's probably right here,
yeah.
And then don't let the user touch it.
Or if RootMetrics just did that themselves, you have to be, verified, or maybe you can submit as a user. You can submit hey, there's a cell site here, and it's up to RootMetrics or Ookla rather to verify that. I think it'd be pretty cool. I
feel like they might get into a little bit of trouble with that though, just because I know
they totally could. The carriers don't really want that.
The carriers literally have NDA agreements. If you work with it's not just the carriers, telecom companies in general usually make you sign NDAs if you're a supplier with them, so you don't report on hey, there's a cell site here type of thing, right?
Yeah. No, you're 110% right. Oh man,
but
so cool though.
But I like the leaderboard idea. I like everything that we've been talking about. One other thing that I think would be really important is since they're a combined company with a lot more capital, I think they should really invest more in the driving aspect of things.
Yeah,
and
I would do that 110%. And the continuous speed test that you mentioned too.
And I also think what would be cool too is if on their coverage map, if they can add a layer that shows this is what T-Mobile's claim coverage is, here's the verified coverage that we were able to test based off user-generated data, like how OG T-Mobile's maps where they had the check boxes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, it was verified. T-Mobile verified. That'd be so cool.
I would like something like that where they pull in that information, here's what T-Mobile claims, here's what we tested, here's the side-by-side. Now you are an educated consumer and can make the buy.
And actually, Steve kind of brings up a good point. He's saying it'd be nice to have CellMapper show the QCI as well. I know QCI is challenging to understand, but what if there was a way that, they have a Cricket coverage map and an AT&T coverage map. What if there was a way you could compare those where you could see okay, these are average speeds on Cricket in the city where it's typically more congested versus AT&T in the city, to really try and get a better understanding of what having a deprioritized plan means, what kind of speeds you can expect.
So I think you can do that to a certain extent, but the biggest problem with the AT&T example is that AT&T prepaid and post. I'm just listen. Yeah. AT&T prepaid and AT&T postpaid, when you run a speed test, all show up as AT&T. So
they need to differentiate that.
Yeah, and then even on postpaid side, you got starter, you got extra, and you got elite, all with different QCI values. And then don't forget as well, there's business plans, there's enterprise plans, and there's FirstNet.
Yeah. Dang.
So that's going to be hard. And also, too, the biggest problem about QCI values specifically, as you know, is you need a rooted Android phone, essentially, if you want to check out.
To get that reading.
And even worth mentioning as well is that when it comes to the reports of these rooted apps, we don't necessarily know if it's 100% accurate all the time. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, totally true. Totally true. But yeah, I would love it. Oh, man. Ookla, Ziff Davis, whoever is the parent company of this conglomerate that owns so many other companies at this point, if you're listening to this, please take our feedback into consideration. We just want the absolute best speed test app possible, and you guys are going to be the ones to build it. So, all
right, so we made our wish list for Santa Claus. Now, what do you think we're actually going to get under the Christmas tree?
Oh, man, Dennis, nothing is the answer. They're not going to... See, this is the crazy thing to me. I'm imagining a deal like this is couple $1 million, maybe a couple $100 million, 50
maybe
million,
like $1 billion.
$1 billion. I have no idea. I have no perception. Actually, I know the telecom space is pretty, like, if they have high paying clients, let's call it a couple $100 million. They just slapped that down to buy RootMetrics, but they haven't done anything to their app. Like, they need to prioritize. I want them to prioritize their app. So I think what we're going to get is probably nothing in the beginning. Ideally, I hope we see like a new app maybe mid next year. I'd say like July next year is my ambitious, hopeful date.
You know what I think is going to happen? I think we're going to end up just seeing two separate apps stay in a similar vein when Sony when Sony purchased Crunchyroll and Funimation. They kept these two separate apps instead of making one ultimate one. Or we see a third app come out that integrates some of the APIs from the two different apps, but the two main apps stay.
Yeah.
Like, those are some of the likelihood things. But hey, on the topic of apps, did you notice something? This is totally not what we were planning to talk about, but did you notice that Ookla finally fixed one of the biggest issues with their speed test app on iPhone?
I did. It's the test again button.
Hey, Ookla, you didn't make it a tiny piece of text anymore. It's a big button now.
Oh my, I was so happy. When I saw that, I tweeted them a screenshot and I just put a big heart around it. I was like, I love you, Ookla. Thank you.
Thank you, Ookla.
Yeah. Oh man. And yeah, like you said, continuous testing. I mean, there's just so many little things. Like, basically, if you combine the design of the Ookla app with some of the data in the RootMetrics app, I think you've got like.
I mean, RootMetrics has like the continuous testing already on iPhone.
Yeah, they already have it. You know, these things are there. It's just like, all right, now I got to switch and use this app, and sometimes it doesn't work, and it's slow, and it doesn't, start and stop tests. So
I just don't understand how Ookla butchered their map so hard. And can I also just be honest about something real quick that doesn't make sense to me? What exactly is Ookla getting out of this acquisition? Like, what would have stopped Ookla from just hiring their own team of drivers? Like, what proprietary thing was RootMetrics doing that Ookla couldn't have just developed over the course of the years that honestly probably would have been cheaper and also probably could have been done better if they built it from scratch than trying to now integrate all this data and stuff that they collected?
That's a great question. I guess I can hypothesize here. I think, based on the article from Fierce Wireless, that these companies will, for the most part, remain separate. Like, they will still have their own clients. They will still operate more or less independently. And to your point, there probably still will be their own individual speed test apps. We'll have the Ookla one. We'll have the RootMetrics one. In fact, I think OpenSignal has two apps. The apps are out of control, is what I'll say. But I think the reason they did it is I suspect RootMetrics has the system down to a science in a very meticulous and easy to execute way. So that's saving Ookla a lot of time, and time saves money. And I will also say, by merging the backend datas together, or getting all of the data together in a place that they can aggregate it and learn from each other, I think it becomes an overall better product for their clients. Like, they could possibly charge more or provide better insights.
What are they charging? Who are they selling this information to?
Like Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, maybe, I don't know, other industry analysts. Like, they sell the data back. That's exactly what they do. And they present to us some of the reports that they're finding. But yeah, I think there's a lot of money in that field. So
gotcha.
That's my guess. I mean, and especially with, Sasha does the driving test every year. I think now they're just going to have like either a way better way of doing that, or they can hire a bunch of different drivers. So we'll see what happens. But
before we talk about the AT&T news, since you brought up Sasha, do you want to talk about real quick, just take another detour real fast, as we're known to do. Do you want to talk about the article you did about the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 benchmarks?
Yeah, I thought this was just funny because I know in our previous podcast you were like, hey, Qualcomm's actually ahead of iPhone. They're doing better in these certain areas. And Sasha from PC Mag had done a test of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chip and noted that it did actually score a little bit lower on the processor front for, I want to say, like Geekbench 5 and a couple of other tests. So, I don't know. I thought it was funny. What did you think when you saw the article?
Yeah, so basically it compared on par from a CPU single-core, multi-core performance standpoint on an iPhone 12 Pro Max, which to me, I look at, I'm like, that's pretty good. Like the 12 Pro Max was already a freaking beast, so whatever. And also, I also thought, like, although it's disappointing that they're not reaching Apple levels of like CPU performance, my thought was, and as was mentioned before on the previous episode, is that like the design language and mindset behind this new chip wasn't meant to be a CPU first focus, right? Like we saw they were really focusing on the connectivity aspect. They really focused on the advancements in AI processing, right? Like the way, and I feel like Apple's going to be going the same way. I mean, we've been seeing them do that with like the enhancements on like a dedicated security part of their chips and different things like that in their laptops and everything too. I feel like the way going forward, it's going to get a lot harder to do these like side by side benchmarks because CPU performance is going to honestly become less and less important, since realistically speaking, phones have gotten like powerful enough, right? Like, like on a mobile phone, what's more important, like just getting the absolute fastest performance, or like battery life, or just efficiency in general, right? Like reducing heat because it's a tight, small form factor, right? I don't know. I thought it was a great article though, Sasha. If you're watching this, we love you, man. You always do the best of jobs writing. I did think the results were interesting. And we definitely next year have to get you back on the show because we miss you, man.
And we're going to have to get some Snapdragon 8 series Gen 1 chips.
Who? You mean
we are? Yeah, I'll be getting some.
I was gonna say because I was gonna say, dude, I converted to iPhone, bro. There's no going back now.
Dennis went blue bubble, and there's no going back. All right, those were some of the bigger stories. There was one that I thought was interesting, Dennis, and this is AT&T lighting up their 5G network in Mexico, of all places. What did you think of that?
I wasn't too aware of it. However, to my brothers and sisters down south, I'm happy for you. I know in Mexico specifically, just like America, they also have their own host of issues when it comes to getting good, reliable, fixed, or traditional home internet solutions. So 5G is going to be a huge boon to my, like I said, my brothers to the south. Yeah. So that's exciting. I guess. Do you know the details on specifically what kind of 5G AT&T is doing down there? Like, is it just like the NSA they've been doing up here, which isn't really that good, or is it like real 5G?
To me, it sounds like it's real 5G. I say that I'm not 100% sure, but basically we have the AT&T Mexico CTO, Nicole Rodriguez, saying that AT&T Mexico would deploy 5G in the country's main markets within the next 3 years. So there's going to be about a 3-year timeline here. They launched with 50 connected devices, which were the Honor 50. So kind of cool. And yeah, I'm not seeing huge details on specifically what type of 5G or where it is. I'm assuming it's going to be a slower rollout than even the US. But what was most interesting is that they actually launched a 5G innovation lab. And this is trying to help focus on propelling 5G, moving it forward, and helping entrepreneurs discover use cases for 5G, how they could apply it to maybe AR and VR, to creating different experiences for customers with the faster speeds and the lower latency. And this actually echoes what T-Mobile has done here in the United States. They launched a 5G Open Innovation Lab as well, and they actually partnered with the University of Washington's CoMotion Lab, and I'm guessing they're going to be helping startups develop and build hardware and find new applications for 5G.
So, Stetson, real quick, I did a quick Google search to see what spectrum they're using, and it appears that AT&T Mexico is utilizing the following bands: 600 megahertz L band, 600 megahertz, L band 1500 megahertz, and then 3.3 gigahertz to the 3.45 gigahertz, and 3.45 gigahertz and 3.6 gigahertz bands, all for their GSM-based 5G rollout, which will represent 14% of mobile connections in Mexico by 2025.
Oh, that's so small. Dude, the US is so far ahead. I think we're at like 30% of connected devices are 5G now.
So I wanted to touch on that, but like from a geography standpoint, like the US is definitely a challenging place to deploy in, but Mexico is honestly a lot harder. Like they got a freaking huge set of like mountains just dividing the country, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not the master of geography, but I think that's how it is, right? There's a huge thing of mountains just dividing.
I'm also not the master of geography. I'm 60% sure that's true, but yeah.
I'm like 70% sure that's true, and that's only because of all the. I'm lagging, aren't I?
No, you're fine.
Okay, I'm 70% of that being true, but that's only because of all of the real-time strategy games that I play, like Hoi 4, where they have like the terrain maps and like it illustrates like these are mountains. So
Yeah. Either way, I think it's cool. Hopefully, everyone who's in Mexico enjoys 5G. There's another carrier there, Mexico's America Movil. So they will be ready to launch 5G, but they haven't declared a specific timeline. So it sounds like it's a slow rollout, but it's kind of cool that AT&T Mexico has launched 5G. And hopefully, if you roam in Mexico, you'll actually get 5G there as well, which I think would be super nice.
Yeah, speaking of just like our neighbors, I'm hoping that we start hearing some news about Canada here soon. Because I remember a little bit earlier on in the year, we talked about Mint going to Canada, right?
Yeah.
I would love to see some more basically partnerships between the MNOs when it comes to us. Like, I would really love to see, because T-Mobile do you remember when T-Mobile first rolled out Simple Choice North America?
Honestly, no.
Well, the marketing around and everything that went around it was basically like, there's no more borders, right? Like Canada, Mexico, United States, we're all like we're all just one big North American continent, network, right? Yeah. But nothing really ended up happening. Like, I don't know if you've ever actually like roamed in these places, but like there's been a lot of restrictions that have actually been put in place at this point due to people abusing some of the terms. Like, right, like T-Mobile put 5 gigabytes now on all their plans for the roaming at fast speeds. AT&T doesn't do that. I think they do give you actual unlimited in Mexico and Canada, but like, it's a little bit hairy. I think Verizon has day passes still, but like I would truly love to see like a collaboration and more working together to like solve specific issues. Like I know T-Mobile on the borders is struggling with their N41 deployment because there's a little bit of interference from what's the alternative band that the Canadians like to use that.
Oh shoot, yeah, I remember we talked about this, but it's just like
I'm blanking on the band number. I want to say it's like band 7 or something low or something, which is like some spin-off of N41. I wish there was more partnership on that side, and like I wish that like it really did get to the point where like there was true unlimited access regardless of where you were at in the US, and maybe we saw some friendly competition from our Canadian brothers, or maybe it'd be the opposite way around for them. We would come give some competition for them,
Yeah, it would be cool. It would be cool. Hopefully Canada gets some more affordable options pretty soon here. So
I don't see it happening, to be honest.
No, I know. It's so sad, but it's so true.
Well, we still got a whole whopping like 8 minutes to bang out, which is really...
Do you want to touch on what's going on with Los Mobile? And maybe provide some updates just here. I know you did a live Q&A with Carlos yesterday to help answer some questions about what was going on. So maybe a TLDR of what happened and what's going on going forward.
Sure, I wasn't expecting you to ask, but yeah. So for everyone that doesn't know, on December 5th, I started helping out Carlos with Los Mobile. And during my short time of helping him so far, we had some pretty sad news. Basically, we're no longer able to offer the AT&T hotspot plan, the dedicated hotspot plan anymore.
So this was I think it was like priced at $80, but it was the unlimited data plan specifically for hotspot devices like the Netgear Nighthawk M1 and the M5.
Correct. And unfortunately, we have to pull the plan. The shutoff date for customers that have the service is going to be December 29th. That's when AT&T is going to be suspending all the lines. And in the meantime, as we lead up to that date, we're actively canceling out the accounts on their last day of their bill cycle and invoice them so they don't get charged and can enjoy like the full month of service type of deal. Basically, I have I posted on the website.
I think I saw someone used like 60 terabytes in a month.
Yeah, so I mean,
That's
TLDR,
like 2 terabytes a day.
Yeah, TLDR, the genesis of the issue is that Los Mobile, we didn't have mechanisms in place to handle all the different situations that we could encounter or enforce all the rules. What kicked it all off is there was a customer that had wanted to port out their number to a different carrier. We weren't able to respond in a timely manner, so they ended up reaching out to AT&T, which sparked an investigation. That investigation ended up leading them to find a portion of our users who were using excessive amounts of data, 60 plus terabytes. People that were SIM swapping phone lines in the hotspots or tablets in the hotspots.
Yeah, which was pretty explicitly against the terms of service. Yeah.
Yeah, and fraud, which for people that don't know in the cell phone space, fraud is a massive issue. That's why you actually do see people use social a lot. Like an Xfinity Mobile requires a social security number to verify your identity.
Got it. Yeah. For the credit, and I think it's kind of like you have the postpaid service, and then everything else is prepaid to kind of get around that.
Well, even on the prepaid side, when it comes to porting, that's why they usually ask you for like name on the account number, billing address needs to match. Also on prepaid, a lot of times I'm pretty sure you have to show your driver's license or some other way to authenticate you, right? So, but basically TLDR, we've pulled the hotspot plan. Like I pulled it off the website so people stop ordering it. We're refunding people that have ordered the plan that haven't been activated, and current customers we're in the process of
helping them
either ending them on their last cycle, or for customers that just got started and maybe can't make it to a full month, I believe we're giving like on a case-by-case basis like partial credits. Like we're evaluating everything and taking care of that. Also there was other major changes that have taken place to try to address some of the other issues. Like one bold move going forward, and I think we're the only carrier that's like this, is that we're going to an eSIM only model moving forward.
Yeah, you are the only carrier to do that.
The reason why we're doing that, I mean, it has a host of benefits, and it was a hard decision, but TLDR, we're a small company. Before I came on to help Carlos was the one that was responsible for sending out SIM cards. And because it was just him sending out SIM cards, it had some logistical issues that go along with it. It definitely extended activation times.
Yeah, I'm just imagining how much of a headache that is. Like, oh God.
Also, SIM cards, like shipping SIM cards, is very expensive via USP postal service.
Probably like $5, $7 at least.
No, like $20 for like the next day shipping stuff that Carlos was doing sometimes.
Jeez.
Like it got pretty pricey. So there's the cost aspect, there's the waiting aspect on the consumer. There was also the confusion because Carlos was sometimes letting people bring their own SIM, but what would happen is someone would go out and buy a prepaid SIM, which wouldn't work. Like,
you need a postpaid. You actually can get those at the Apple Store for free, but yeah.
Right, and we take ownership of the fact that things weren't clearly outlined that say that, but like TLDR, it caused for a poor customer experience, too many like uncontrolled variables. eSIM makes life a lot easier. It saves us on the shipping costs. It lets us hopefully get you activated quicker. It also prevents one of the bigger issues, which is, well, doesn't prevent entirely, but it makes it a heck of a lot harder, which is the SIM swapping issue.
Yeah.
And also the issue of people using non-compliant phones on AT&T, because generally speaking, if a phone supports eSIM, it's probably going to be a phone that supports voice over LTE and has been certified for AT&T, since basically that's iPhones, Pixels, and Samsung S21, I believe, are the phones that support eSIM.
Finally, Samsung.
So lots of changes that have been going on behind the scenes, and I'm going to also just say that you know what? I'll be the first to mention it here. We heard a lot of people's feedback as well in regards to multi-line discounts. So that's also been a thing that's being discussed. And I will just say that to my awesome fans that end up watching this on Friday, I would try to keep a close eye on the website over the course of the weekend, because there is going to be some exciting news that we do as a follow-up communication that I think will make people relatively happy as we address a few more major pain points. And just be patient with us along the way. It's still a very small team, but at least we're taking steps and strides to improve a lot of the things that I know I talked about having problems, which was the communication, the clearness of the website. So
I mean, it sounds like you're basically, there's some sad news. Someone abused the service. I mean, this actually kind of harkens back to US Mobile when they offered unlimited. Like, you can almost see exactly why they had to pull the plug on it. Like, some people can really use a whole lot of data. So some sad news there, but it sounds like all of the changes you're making are really to provide customers with a better experience, to give them what they're looking for, and just really smooth out the Los Mobile touch points from activation to customer service to billing, to provide people what they're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be candidly honest. We don't necessarily have all the systems that I want to have in place, like immediately implemented. Remember,
I've working towards it. That's why these changes are coming about.
Yeah, so basically, simple things are happening. The most important thing is communication and transparency are one thing that are going to be greatly improved. I actually plan to add a page on the website that's going to be almost blog-esque style, where there's going to be basically announcements of like what we're working on, milestones. Hopefully not fall in the trap that US Mobile does, where they say
do not fall in that trap. You guys can do it. Just push it back by like 2x your estimation for time. But yeah, no, I definitely want to wish Los Mobile well, and hope you guys are able to get off the ground running here and provide people better experience and what they're looking for. And yeah, I still have the Verizon line, which I've got to test out hopefully soon here. And
and just to clarify, because there's been a lot of confusion, hotspot usage on the phone lines is still unlimited. Like, that hasn't changed.
Oh, sweet. So you could still use, that's like a great option for RVers then. You get that Los Mobile unlimited hotspot, throw it in a phone. The problem is you just have to use a dedicated phone as opposed to a dedicated hotspot device.
Right. The only thing that's changed is we're not selling the dedicated hotspot anymore, and everything is eSIM. So tablet plans and phone lines are unaffected. Like, whatever the plans were before that, and that obviously doesn't affect our sister companies like T-Mobile and Verizon. Like, those are all still like the same plans.
Yeah.
So
sweet. That's awesome.
We basically got lucky that things didn't go as badly as it could have went, and this is something that was a very good focal point to make everybody move forward. So
yeah. Awesome. Thank you for that. I guess one final news talking about plan changes here. Boost Mobile launched a new plan.
It's 25. Yeah, 25 bucks a month.
They're calling it the Carrier Crusher plan. This is just unbelievable to me. So this one is 25 bucks a month, and you're getting 35 gigs of data per month. And it's available for both new and existing customers, and it's an annual plan. The only way to get this is if you pay annually, so that is going to come out to $300 up front. I will say, though,
it's pretty good value.
It's pretty good value, but I was on the Boost Mobile website, and I didn't see this plan. So let me just do a quick check here, Dennis, because this is either going to be like what I just said is really good, but what I was seeing wasn't great. So let's see all plans, and this should take us to the
this is the hidden one where it's hard to find.
Yeah, this is Boost. Why are these not just on the main page?
There it is, unlimited.
Okay, yeah. So this is great. I was actually
12 gigs of hotspot too.
Yeah, this is outstanding. This is actually better than Mint Mobile.
It is better than Mint Mobile, because Mint Mobile caps out at what, 30?
It's the same 35 gigs, but Mint Mobile only has 5 gigs of hotspot, and Mint's plan is $30 a month as opposed to $25.
So yeah, this is $5 cheaper. And does Boost have tax and fees included?
I don't think so. They might have before. I don't think so. I actually just paid. I should check if I check whatever I was just charged, then
Well, anyway, yeah. I actually, for the first time ever, I'm going to give a round of applause. Good job, Boost.
It's actually good.
In all sincerity, this is actually a good value plan. It makes sense for what you're offering. And especially if you're getting on the AT&T network specifically with this, this is incredible value on the AT&T network, because let's see, AT&T prepaid, I believe, has a similar kind of annual plan, but they only give you 8 gigs for that pricing.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. So if you can get this on AT&T, it's outstanding. This might be the best AT&T plan available, but there's a caveat, because I don't know how to guarantee you get it on AT&T. I actually activated on the SIM card they sent over, and it was T-Mobile. So,
ooh, if it's on T-Mobile, I don't know if it's necessarily as good.
I mean, it's better than Mint, so it's still good. It's just, is
it better than Mint though, Stetson?
Yeah, I mean, the service experience part of things, customer service support, the app, probably not. But
I was gonna say, because I've been having a pretty great time with that Minty Fox. Ironically enough, fun fact, I've noticed that my Mint phone will sometimes connect to a different band than my T-Mobile phone traditional. Like, have you noticed that in certain areas?
Huh? No, I haven't. I mean, I haven't really been using those side by side. So,
it was just a small thing that I noticed. I mean, it could just be the phones making preferential choices, but it seems like the phones wanted to lock on to different like band / cell sites.
100%. So, all right.
But no, great plan from Boost. I kid and joke aside, but it is truly a very good plan. I honestly really want to see them, first off, just fix this whole website experience. But
yeah, to find this, all right, so to a normal person, you have to go to boostmobile.com. And then you're on boostmobile.com. You got to go to, you could click this banner up at the top here, all right? But otherwise, you got to go to plans, phone plans, which is what I would normally do. You can't click on any of these things. So you've got to go down and like, I guess by chance, if you click on like how to redeem, nope, you can't do that. That's my mistake. You got to go and click on...
See, Stetson, what you really got to do is you got to call in, have a representative hook you up with this special deal.
You got to click this, get it now.
Okay.
And then you're brought to this sub website, which is myboostmobile.com. And then you can go to the plans and check them out. It's just, what, Boost, what are you doing?
And then they don't even, and then the featured plans aren't even the good one. They show like go to the featured plans, $25 for 5 gigs. Like that's
what Ting offers. It's like their standard.
Best value, $15 for 2 gigs. I would say the best value is definitely the paying $10 for and getting like 35. Like,
yeah.
Which, question, Stetson, do you know if there's a video cap on that?
I currently do not. I have Boost actually activated, so I can find out very shortly.
I'd be curious to know, because if there's no video cap, then it very well might just be the best plan at that price point. Even I would argue that it might even be better than Visible. If it has no video cap specifically,
it's just everything you need, and 35 gigs is so much for most people that it'd be worth it. I mean, I was joking yesterday on the live stream. Neville was saying, Magenta Max customers are now using an average of 35 gigs. Like, boom, instead of spending $85 on Magenta Max, you can literally get this plan for $60 less per month, and it still comes with 35 gigs of data.
Stetson, on the topic of usage, because of everything that's been going on with me helping out with the Lowe's and what I do for work and all that other fun stuff, do you want to take a guess what my usage looked like for the previous month?
Is this minutes or is this cellular data?
Let's do cellular data and then minutes and texts.
I'm guessing you're at 40 gigabytes of usage for cellular data.
Very wrong. 8 gigabytes.
8 gigabytes. Wow. That's still up there for you.
That is up there for me. 7.6 to be precise.
Okay. Wow.
How many texts do you think I've sent because of...
A bajillion.
No, only 57 because iMessage.
Oh, because of iMessage. Those are all authentication codes. That's what those are.
Uh-huh. And how many minutes do you think I spent on the phone?
1,200.
Over 6,000.
Oh my gosh, Dennis. You are a chatterbox.
No. Do you want to know the real reason? It's because my company uses a platform called WebEx.
Yeah.
And when we go into these meetings and stuff like that, you call in with your number. So it calls my number, and then 8 hours a day are basically just spent with me going on WebEx, which 60 times 8 times 8 would be whatever. Yeah. That's
crazy. I was checking my usage. This is why iPhones are so annoying. I swapped SIMs, and it reset, and it says 23.4 megabytes.
I was going to say the green screen was hurting you, but honestly, I don't have that issue on eSIM. If I swap between eSIM, I noticed that it's smart. It will change the data usage to show it correctly.
Yeah, well, this was...
physical SIMs?
I swapped the physical SIM, and so it's for this AT&T SIM that I put in yesterday. I've used 23.4 megabytes.
Hey, Stetson.
I'd have to go and find the other one.
One more side question, so we're talking iPhones real quick. Do you have all 13 Pros, or do you have like a Pro Max?
I have two iPhone 13 Pros. I purchased one fully unlocked. I got a second one with a Verizon trade-in deal, which turns out was a great option. And I purchased one iPhone 13.
But no Maxes and no
Yeah,
Minis?
I mean, the Max was the same as the Pro this year, and I actually prefer the smaller size, so that's why I went with the just 13 Pro.
Okay. Well, then let me ask a different question to this. Between the 13 and the 13 Pro, from like a usability, user experience standpoint, like, can you actually notice the difference between 60 hertz, 120 hertz?
Yeah. I mean, I can easily notice the difference. It's more so when I go back, like the animations are not faster as they are, I think, on Samsung, but it's definitely a way smoother. I love the 120 hertz. I wouldn't want to go back. The truth is, I do go back sometimes, and it's like, all right, this is like fine. You know, it's not amazing, but it's fine. iOS is just so smooth anyway that you don't really notice it, I think, as much as on Android.
Well, the reason why I don't notice it as much as on Android is because the animations are so bloody long. Like,
well, you can speed them up on Android if you wanted to.
Exactly. I always turn it to 0.5.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. No, I like the Pros, and that's what I got. I've used the regular 13, and I actually like how light that is. But I'm a big mobile photographer, and I wanted that 3x telephoto. So
yeah, dude, the Pro Max is a chonky boy. It's actually, I mean, this might be perception, but I actually think it feels lighter than the 12 Pro Max, even though I think on paper it's heavier.
You're definitely, something's not right there. It's 110%
but it feels
heavier.
lighter. But I don't know.
All right.
Yeah.
That's what I got. This episode was sponsored by the like button, so make sure you go ahead and hit that like button below. We really appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't already. And I want to thank all of these awesome Patreon supporters for their continued support of the channel. Alex, Breaking Data. I'm not going to read all of your names, but thank you all so much. You've been on the ticker at the bottom.
And don't forget, if we make it over 1,000 subscribers before year end, we're going to do a 4-hour special. So seriously,
4-hour special.
Seriously, share this with your friends. Put it on Twitter. Get people to subscribe. If we can get over 1,000 subscribers before the end of this year, we will do another 4-hour special.
Boom. Either way, that's going to be it. I'm Stetson.
And I'm Dennis.
And we look forward to talking to you in the next episode. Take care, everybody.